The film begins with a young man named Sultan, who lives in a small village with his mom and two younger siblings, Aji and Bilkis. At that time, Aji has big dreams of going to school in Jakarta once he finishes high school, and Sultan, who loves his family dearly, promises to help pay for it. However, Sultan doesn't have enough money saved up yet. One day, Sultan got in trouble at work because he was late a lot, and his boss fired him. He was really upset. He talked to his friend Jup about it, and Jup cheered him up, telling him to keep going and help his family no matter what. Meanwhile, Bilkis asked her friend Nabila to help her get a job in Jakarta. Nabila said she worked at a makeup company with good pay, but she needed her mom's approval first. Bilkis then asked her brother Is to convince their mom. At first, Is was unsure, but he agreed to help in the end. That night, Is talked to Bilkis's mom about it. At that time, she was worried but Is convinced her by saying Bilkis could be as successful as him. Reluctantly, Bilkis's mom agreed, but only if Bilkis promised to take care of herself. Soon after, Is gave Bilkis an envelope to give to Sultan when she got to Jakarta. The next day, Bilkis arrived in Jakarta and went to Sultan's office, but she got kicked out because she didn't know what happened. Luckily, Jup came and helped her find Sultan. Meanwhile, Sultan, who was struggling to find a job, got a big shock when Bilkis showed up. She was mad because Sultan had been lying. Before he could explain, the loan shark from yesterday came back and Sultan panicked. He tried to quiet Bilkis, but Jup spilled the beans about the debt. There, Bilkis finally knew that Sultan had been sending money home to pay off a huge debt. Things got even worse when Is called and revealed that his late father had a massive debt and Sultan's house was at risk. They argued and blamed each other until the loan shark found them. Unfortunately, their stuff got taken away to pay the debt. There, Sultan promised Bilkis he'd pay off the debt, especially since he had a job interview the next day. He knew it wouldn't pay much, but he'd do whatever it took. At that moment, Bilkis wanted to help out, so she asked Nabila for a job. When Sultan found out, he took Bilkis straight to Nabila's workplace. But surprise, instead of a makeup company, it was a massage place. Turns out, Nabila tricked them. Bilkis felt let down because Nabila used her name. Back at home, Sultan took sleeping pills to ignore his hunger. Later, Bilkis called Nabila again, only asking for a massage, nothing more. The next day, Sultan panicked because he was late for his interview. When he finally got there, they didn't hire him because his resume was fake. And on top of that, he wanted the same pay as the HR manager.
At the same time, Bilkis got her first job and her first customer, Evan, asked her to be his pretend girlfriend for money.
Even though she needed the cash, Bilkis said no because Evan had creepy ideas. After that, Bilkis lost her job. Feeling lost, she agreed to Evan's offer. They settled on a price of $2 million, but first, Evan wanted to make her look pretty. That night, Sultan found out Bilkis worked at a massage place. When he asked about her, he also had some bad thoughts because Bilkis left work with a customer after getting fired. Soon after, Bilkis was looking like a model. Then, Evan introduced her to his friends. There, Bilkis was amazed to learn that Evan made $150 million a month from buying and selling stocks. As they headed home, Sultan warned Bilkis not to sell herself like Nabila. But Bilkis reassured him she could handle herself and showed him the money she earned. Suddenly, Aji showed up with Jup. They were shocked to learn Sultan and Bilkis had been lying. When they threatened to tell the truth, Sultan and Bilkis grabbed Aji's phone. Eventually, he persuaded Aji by giving Bilkis $2 million for pretending to be her boyfriend to help her pay for college. It wasn't a lot, but Sultan promised to pay it back. The next day, Bilkis told Sultan about her friend Evan, who made lots of money from stocks. Sultan was intrigued and asked Bilkis to introduce him to Evan. The next day, they met Evan, and Bilkis apologized for accidentally bumping into him before. Luckily, Evan forgave her and taught them about trading. But trading was tough. Bilkis and Sultan kept making mistakes when they practiced with a pretend account. So, Sultan asked Evan for tips on learning quickly and making money easily. There, Evan explained that Sultan should buy stocks when their prices drop and sell when they go up. And to find out when to do that best, Sultan should listen in on the big bosses' conversations. Evan even gave them the address where the bosses usually played golf. The next day, Sultan and Bilkis went to Royal Golf Jakarta to ask for a job. The HR department said the only job available was collecting golf balls, paying $1 for each one, but they had to stay 100 meters away from important people playing golf. Sultan, not giving up, tried to sneak his phone into a rich businessman's golf bag to record their talk, but failed when his phone got thrown away. Determined, they returned the next day, but were sent home because the owner, Salim, was coming. Sultan thought Salim must know about stocks, so they decided to steal golf gear on display. Pretending to be golfers, they challenged Salim to a game and overheard his talk about his company. When Bilkis successfully got the golf ball into the target, Salim told his friend he'd buy Boss Q's shares worth 500 billion, expecting their value to go up. Soon after, they rushed to tell Evan about it, hoping for a profit. But Sultan needed 150 million to buy the shares and another 300 million to save his house. Evan agreed to lend him the money, but only if Sultan convinced Bilkis to date him. Sultan refused because he didn't want to sell out his sister. Back at their rented house, Aji said the golf gear Bilkis and Sultan had was worth a lot, enough to pay for college. Soon after, Sultan contacted a loan shark, offering the gear as collateral, and got 50 million. With that, they bought Boss Q's shares. After that, the shares went up, and they made a profit of 10 million. Meanwhile, Is had a banker show up to auction Sultan's house. At that time, Wanda told Is to clear out the house right away, sending Is into a panic. Turns out, Is got the info wrong, but the bank only gave Sultan a month to pay off his late father's debt. In the chaos, Is called Sultan to take his mom to the city so she wouldn't know about the house. At that moment, Sultan lied, saying Aji was sick, even though Aji was just under anesthesia. After knowing about that, his mom rushed to Jakarta. When Sultan tried to withdraw 100 million from the stock market, they freaked out because it was temporarily blocked due to Boss Q's shares. After that, they asked Evan, who said they'd get their money in 2 to 3 days. Since his mom was coming soon, Sultan asked Evan to rent out his house for a week. Upon hearing that, Evan was agree as long as Bilkis wants to pretend to be his girlfriend. Since they had no other choice, she agreed, but only if they acted like they were getting to know each other first. After hearing that, Evan agreed to lend his house for a week after hearing Bilkis's decision. Then, Sultan and Bilkis quickly moved Aji, who was still sleeping. They even put up pictures to make it look like Sultan's house. Soon, Sultan's mom arrived and was proud of his success. But when Aji woke up, he realized Sultan had been lying about their wealth. Luckily, Sultan and Bilkis explained that Aji was just confused from being sick. As Bilkis and Sultan were having dinner, they were worried because their mom was visiting Jakarta and they didn't want her to find out their house had been taken by the bank. Suddenly, they found out they made a big profit on the stock market. But then, they got a call saying their mom's stuff was moved to their friend's house, and they had to pay a huge amount of money in just 10 days. They were really stressed about where to get the money. Then, they met Evan, who suggested they borrow the money, but Bilkis had to marry him. Upon hearing that, Bilkis said no way, because that's not how things are done. But then Evan had another idea. He said if Sultan wanted to make a lot of money, they needed to know which stocks were going to make big profits. And the only person who could predict that for sure was Robert Winoto, a famous investor. Luckily, Robert was having a meeting soon, and Evan's dad was a member, so they might get some help there. Since Evan really wanted to marry Bilkis, he decided to help them out. He got them fancy clothes and a cool car. But when he tried to introduce Bilkis to his parents, she said their relationship wasn't serious enough for marriage. She explained that she just wanted to have a casual dinner with both families, not get married.
Evan felt really hurt and ended up telling Sultan's mom all about Bilkis and Sultan's situation.
He revealed that Sultan lost his job and the house belongs to him now. Bilkis works as a massage therapist and sometimes goes on dates for money.
Sultan's mom was shocked to hear all this.
The next day, Bilkis and Sultan went to a big party. Sultan wanted to talk to Robert, so he pretended to be a businessman. But Bilkis noticed that Robert looked uneasy, so she went over and gave him some tea. She tried to charm Robert, but it didn't work. Then, Robert said that to succeed, you need to use your brain and learn lots of things. He said when you can't solve a problem, it just means you need more practice or knowledge. Suddenly, Robert started feeling sick and wanted them to leave, but then he fainted after drinking Bilkis's tea. Soon after, Bilkis tried to find out which investments Robert liked, while Sultan distracted everyone with a speech. After Robert picked some companies to invest in, they quickly left the building using the emergency stairs. Right away, they used all their money to buy shares in the companies Robert chose. When they got back home, they were surprised to see how upset Sultan's mom and Aji were. At that time, Sultan's mom, realizing that Sultan had been lying about his success, asked him to show her his real home. It turned out to be just a small rented place. Sultan's mom wanted to know why he had lied. Bilkis explained that Sultan had made everyone believe he was successful in Jakarta, which wasn't true. This caused a big argument, especially when Sultan mentioned that the value of his investments had dropped significantly. Feeling down, Sultan went to talk to Jup about why he always seemed to fail at being the support his family needed, despite trying hard. Jup pointed out that Sultan's only mistake was lying. Jup suggested that if Sultan had been honest from the beginning and had asked his mom for her blessings, things might have turned out differently. At the same time, Bilkis was getting really annoyed because Aji kept asking to go to college. Aji should have understood the situation better and not just think about what he wanted. Bilkis also told Aji to start taking care of himself because she and Sultan had always managed on their own, without troubling anyone else, including their mom. The next day, Bilkis was busy learning how to trade stocks, while her mom and Aji were preparing to sell food to earn some money for the family. Just then, Bilkis was startled by the sudden appearance of two people sent by Robert. At that moment, Sultan arrived and admitted that he was responsible for an accident that caused Robert to faint. Because of this, the two men took Sultan away. But before they left, he asked Bilkis to take care of their mom at home and to keep this whole situation a secret from her. A few weeks later, Sultan was in jail because he had drugged Robert. During a visit, Bilkis apologized to Sultan for blaming him for everything that had gone wrong. In the middle of this emotional visit, Sultan was shocked to see that the stocks he had bought shot up in value to 405 million. They were both overjoyed. Soon after, Bilkis quickly called Wanda to try and stop their house from being auctioned off. But since 10 days had already passed, the house was still set to be auctioned the next day. At that time, Bilkis had to rush to Sukabumi by herself to try to win the auction. After Bilkis paid off 70 million of Sultan's debt to a loan shark, she accidentally let slip that Sultan was in jail. This news shocked her mother, but thankfully, she stayed calm enough not to trigger her heart condition. With only 345 million left, Bilkis used all the money to bid on their house at the auction. Meanwhile, Sultan's mom went to visit him in jail. She asked how much the fine was to keep Sultan from being in jail for 5 years. Sultan told her the fine was 350 million. Soon after, Bilkis came back in tears because she hadn't won the auction to save their house. Hearing this, her mom told them to accept it because, to her, the true value of a home is having all her kids together. She suggested using the money to pay a fine to free Sultan from jail. However, Sultan strongly disagreed. He wanted Bilkis to use the money to start a business and to pay for Aji's college instead. Sultan insisted they listen to him because he believed it was the best choice. He trusted Bilkis to take over as the main support for the family. With heavy hearts, they had to leave Sultan behind in jail as they tried to move forward. The next day, Sultan got a big surprise from the prison warden who told him he was free to go home. It turned out that everyone agreed Sultan was irreplaceable as the head of the family. Hearing this, he felt deeply moved and motivated to succeed again. At the end of the movie, we see Sultan being interviewed by a stock investment company. He's asked to explain stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. Thanks to the knowledge Evan had shared with him, Sultan could easily explain all these investment types. He used a fun analogy about chickens to impress the HR person, and he got the job at the company right away. The film ends with Sultan starting his new journey. The moral lesson from this film is always double-check who you're buying your chickens from because you might just end up explaining stocks to HR instead of clucking your way out of a job interview.